Good morning, everybody, and welcome again to Travels with Monkey Boy. Today we are again going back to April of 1997. And if you remember where we left off yesterday, we just gotten done with a 2-day whitewater rafting trip down the Trasuli River, and we had gotten off, had lunch, and then took a 2-hour van trip to the Chitiwan National Park. And this is where we begin. The jungle. I wouldn't say we were arrested when we arrived. I mean, we hadn't showered in 2 days. It was hot and sweaty. We were all covered to some degree in sewer water. And now we were arriving in a steamy jungle filled with biting insects. Royal Chitiwan Park was long used as a game reserve by the Indian Raj and English nobility. It is most famous for its large population of Indian rhinos and tigers. The Indian rhino is a curious animal. Its hide looks very much like its layers of steel overlapping and riveted onto the animal. You can see one behind me here. The animal is much more tank-like than the African rhino and also looks faker. The tigers are just about the most deadly thing on the planet. We asked our guide in Tanzania if he thought a tiger could survive in Africa. He said that if you brought a tiger to the Serengeti at the end of the year, all the lions would be dead, killed and eaten by the tiger. Also, in contrast to the lion, I think the tiger is just about the prettiest animal in the world. But the problem with tigers is that it's nearly impossible to see them. Anyway, years ago, the British and Indian kings would come to Chitwan and ride on the back of elephants to hunt the tigers. Today, there are almost no tigers or elephants left. To get into this marvelous park, our van pulled up to the edge of a little river, and a series of porters in dugout canoes brought us and our luggage across to the little island. We were a bit late at this time and had to quickly get into our cabins, wash our face, and get ready for our scheduled events. The park had set up for us to have like 6 events: evening, morning, afternoon, evening, and morning again. For this first event, our family, along with a few other people, were going off for a nature hike. We were told to have good shoes on, long pants or mosquito repellent, and no bright shirts. Well, in my vocabulary, bright is equal to loud. You know, yellows, reds, wild pinks. So, ever obedient, I wanted to have the least loud thing I could think of. So I put on a plain old white shirt. When we got to the meeting spot, our guide took one look at me and said, "Oh, oh dear, very bright." I said, "No, it's white." And he said, "That's what he meant by bright." I said, "Don't worry, I'll go back and change." And he told me, "Don't worry, we don't have time." Okay, so we're all clear on this. I'm a big man, a very big man. If a kid wears a red shirt around a bull, it's one thing. When I do, well, it's like a damn billboard. So for some reason, our nature guide warns us not to wear bright clothes. Then he sees me in what he considers the brightest of the clothes and says, "Oh dear," and then says, "Well, no time to change. Don't worry." You know, this is exactly the kind of series of events that makes me worry. Then the whole nature of our walk was explained to us. Here is this Indian man, maybe 5.5 feet tall, maybe 100 pounds, wearing khakis and carrying a stick. Well, this is our guide, and he's going to take us for a walk into the jungle. Boy, the old knees start wobbling now. I mean, in Africa, they won't let you get out of the car because the animals are so dangerous. But here we are in Nepal, where the meanest Nepalese animal would eat the meanest animal in Africa, and we're going to go for a walk to try to find one? In fact, his instructions were fascinating. He said it was breeding time for the rhinos, so they were especially aggressive and irritable. If we saw a rhino and it decided to charge us, we were not to try to outrun it because they were much faster than us. What we were to do is to try to climb a tree, he said as I looked at our 6-year-old. Or if we couldn't climb a tree, hide behind one as I looked around and saw the very thin trees and looked at my girth and suddenly gleaming white shirt. If we were lucky, he would lose interest and go away. Then he said that if we were to be attacked by a sloth bear, the most aggressive of the animals in the park and the most likely to attack us, we should forget about climbing the tree because they were great climbers. Also, forget about running away because they too were fast. He said if a sloth bear attacks, we were to curl up on the ground and protect our most tasty parts. One doesn't even want to think about that. If we were lucky, he would lose interest and go away. Then he said if we came upon a tiger and it wanted to attack, we should take off our shoes. And I asked him, why should we take off our shoes? And he says, because shoes screw up a tiger's digestive tract. Okay, he was joking. What he told us to do is he said we should all gather together in a group and wave our arms and make a lot of noise. If we were lucky, the tiger would only take one of us, and the noise would likely attract the rhinos and sloth bears to the survivors. He further offered this comforting statement. Don't worry, though, if something attacks us, I will use myself to distract it. So I look over at this morsel of a man whose sole means of defense is a stick. And I'm supposed to think that one of these three things attack us, they will be scared off by him, or that they'll decide to eat him instead of the meaty guy with the white shirt. And even if this attacking animal did go for him and kill and eat him, here we are out in the middle of the jungle with no directions back to the camp, surrounded by things that want to kill us, and we without a stick. So I'm here to tell you that I faced fear and faced it very poorly. I mean, I could hardly go back, and yet every step deeper in the jungle, I swear to you, my legs wobbled. And really, not for me, but wouldn't you feel stupid if you added the 2 day jungle adventure to the tail end of your Nepal trip, only to have your children eaten by a sloth bear? The kids, of course, were impervious. I think at 6 and 8, it's pretty hard to understand the difference between this and the zoo. Both places you get tired feet, and both places there are a bunch of critters around. But I knew better, and I knew that not only was I not their protector, I was the big damn neon signboard flashing Americans here to eat. Somehow, though, we managed to wobble through the jungle. It wasn't the hacking through vegetation kind of jungle, go see my Brazil story, more like the canopy of tall trees with no light getting through to the floor kind of jungle. Peaceful, except for the harsh reality that you could be dead around the next corner. Then we spotted it. A huge male rhino laying in a mud wallow. The wallow was about 5 feet below us, and we were maybe 20 feet away from this mammalian tank in heat. Our guide started shh, shh, shh in us and had enough of an insistence in the voice that I realized that this wasn't Disney's Adventureland ride. The girls chattered away until I muzzled them. The guide whispered that the rhino would likely spend the day in the wallow, so we shouldn't worry. And then the rhino got up and started walking towards us. He climbed the little hill from the wallow that put him on the same plane as us, only a few feet away, and then he turned right and we were left. I know what you guys are saying. It's just a rhino. They are kind of cuddly animals and not much scarier than, say, an American buffalo. Well, the Indian rhino is the largest rhino. And while it's about the same height as a buffalo, 6 feet at the shoulders, tall as me, it is more than twice as long, up to 10 feet. So think of a school bus. And it can weigh as much as 5 times as much as a American buffalo. They are also nearly blind and are fast and mean. You can feel the ground move as he rumbles past. We cowered in the bushes until he was well past. After that bit of excitement, the rest of the 2 hour walk was a bit tame. We did come to an area where a tiger had marked his territory by spraying his scent. The children were quite impressed. Again, for comparison's sake, a typical house cat is 6 pounds. A typical male tiger is about 600 pounds. So imagine you get a litter box where you keep 100 cats, and that's pretty much the smell. We also saw some cool looking birds from the Bird of Paradise collection. We saw dead deer, we saw some huge beehives, and in the distance, which was best for me, we saw some more rhino. When we got back to camp, besides being tired and hungry and stinky from the sewer river and itchy from all the bug bites and sunburned, I was feeling a bit exhilarated. It is fun to be in nature, especially when you survive. That evening, we had a buffet dinner and were treated to the famous Indian stick dancers. Basically, a bunch of guys with bamboo sticks who run around in a circle and sing to the rhythmic pounding of bamboo sticks. Right hand stick to left hand stick, pounding the guy in front of you stick, smacking the guy behind you stick. An hour of sticks, pounding, 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 till I was ready to crawl into my cabin and cry from the pain of the day. Then the most extraordinary thing happened. They asked for volunteers to do the dance, and Alex raised his hand and went to try it. With my self absorption in the day's various pains, I didn't want to go to this stupid native dance thing. Only at Jilreen's insistence did I go, and it turns out Alex was transfixed by it. I wouldn't have guessed it, but I was glad to see he enjoyed it, and then had fun watching him and then his mother up there dancing and smacking sticks. We verily crawled into bed that night. I think I carried Frankie the last 100 yards to our cabin, and we quickly fell asleep, ignoring the sounds of the mosquitoes and other crawly things that were most likely everywhere. There was no light in the cabin, and I think that was for the good. Okay. The next morning, we had breakfast, and by 6 a.m., they whisked us off over the river for bird watching. This would best be described as the anti safari. Everything that the safari was the day before, this wasn't. Or to put it more succinctly, and to risk insulting my poor mother, who loves all avian things, it sucked. Firstly, we were tired, which is a bit of a problem for us, but a huge issue when the kids are tired. Secondly, there was not any element of danger. We left the one island by boat and crossed over to the banks of civilization. But worst of all was the stupidity of the exercise. Our guide was an excellent spotter of birds, less so a sharer of binoculars. We would be walking in this bland sort of field with big old trees, and he would stop, motion us to be quiet, and then revel in the beauty he was witnessing through his binoculars. He would fumble the one pair of binoculars that was shared between the 8 of us, and by the time we focused on what he was enjoying, the bird would fly away. Frankie was immediately cold and tired and insisted on being carried, a joy when she was 2 and a chore now that she's 6. Alex and Matthew were completely disinterested and poked at each other with sticks. The rest of us just trooped along because we'd paid for this and it was on the schedule. The little birdman flittered here and there, joyously calling out the local names of the wondrous birds he was spotting. We rarely glimpsed anything but a small dark spot in a tall tree 100 yards away. After about an hour and a half of this, we basically told the guide to have a ball, but we were going back to the dock and wait for the next boat. He told us the boats only came at a schedule, and we weren't scheduled to go back until 8:30. After threatening to swim back, he promised to come to some kind of accommodation. And sure enough, by 8:30, we were back on the boat heading to the island. As I walked back about 10 feet from our cabin, sitting in a tree was a white bird of paradise with one of those 3 foot long tails that look all puffed and billowy, like from Dr. Seuss books. It was beautiful and helped me appreciate my morning bird effort. 10:30 was our next scheduled event, and this was the long-awaited elephant safari. Our family, with an elephant driver, climbed onto a little cabin on the back of the beast, and off we went to explore the jungle some more. Outside of it being remarkably uncomfortable, I don't know what I was expecting, but our wooden perch was hardly padded, and by its very nature, an elephant's movement is a jarring thing. It was a fascinating experience nonetheless. We were mostly hunting rhinos. There are a lot of rhinos on the island, and apparently the rhino and the elephant are pretty comfortable with each other. It's interesting because While the Indian rhino is much bigger than the African rhino, the Indian elephant is only about 80% of the African variety size. So the two animals in bulk are reasonably close, 5-ton rhino, 6-ton elephant, where they're about the elephant in Africa is like twice the size of a rhino. The difference comes in height, where the elephant is almost 10 feet tall. I think if a rhino decided to charge, he could wreak havoc on an elephant. But I guess this just doesn't happen, or it won't until Dan's Freak Show Battles of Nature on NBC this fall. Anyway, nothing seems to be much interested in elephant. The Indian variety seem of much calmer temperament than their African sisters. And besides, they're basically unknown in the wild here anymore. So they're just like a big tree walking around to the other critters in the park. And we did see many varieties of deer and antelope. We constantly heard the eerie cry of the peacock, which is native to here, but disappointedly never saw one. Now, why our stupid bird guy in the morning didn't look for a peacock, I have no idea. Maybe not impressive enough for him. We also had our guide with great excitement point out a chicken. Really? Okay, maybe it was a rooster. We heard a cockadoodle doing. But the interesting thing is that this was a wild chicken. One doesn't think about where chickens come from. I mean, they seem to be just about everywhere, but basically they seem to live on chicken farms or in the poultry section of your local grocery store. Well, they had to come from somewhere, and that somewhere is here. I guess all domestic chickens are descendants of the Indian wild red jungle fowl, which also lives here and looks basically like, well, like a chicken. It seems weird to me that the same jungle that produces 600-pound cats, powerful enough to clear the Serengeti of its 10,000 lions, also has room for these barnyard pea brains to evolve. But there you have it. When I was first scheduling this trip, I thought it was going to be a 2-day safari on the back of the elephant, not a 2-hour safari. It sounded very exotic to me, and I was quite excited. Then I learned that the 2-day thing was adventures in the jungle, including an elephant safari. My initial disappointment gave way to relief. It was an interesting perspective to see the world 10 feet up on the back of this magnificent creature. But there's a reason why people don't routinely ride on elephants, namely that every step they take is enough to rattle the fillings in your teeth. Still, the 2 hours was time well spent. We were able to get to within about 20 feet of a number of rhino, and for my money, there's still no more prehistoric looking animal than these Indian rhinos. We returned to the camp a little after noon and were ready for lunch. The next event for the day was swimming with the elephants. This was really far more fun than I expected. Basically, about 10 of us piled onto the back of an elephant, and he wades into the middle of the river and then just flops over. It takes a dramatic leap of faith to have your 60-pound daughter sitting on the neck of a 12,000-pound elephant and watch him roll over in the middle of a stream. But I figured, hey, they couldn't do this if it wasn't safe. I mean, the lawyers would close them down, right? Right? Hmm. Maybe having an aggressive legal system isn't such a bad thing. Anyway, after the elephant flops down in the river, you get off and start throwing water on him, and he squirts water around, and then you splash him some more. Then he kneels down, you climb on his back, and back to the shore. Okay, it's not a space shuttle ride, but the kids just squealed with delight. In fact, Frankie went back and did it 3 times. Alex refused the first time. Hey, you do the math. Elephant to boy is roughly equivalent in weight ratios as boy is to egg. And you know how that usually ends up. But when he saw how much fun the other kids had and how few skulls were actually broken, he wanted to go too. I actually didn't go to the first 2 times because as big as an elephant is, it still can only hold 6 or 7 people before you run out of room. It was exciting in the same sort of way that the nature walk the day before was exciting. I mean, there was a legitimate, although small, chance that we could die doing this. And when you survive, you feel good that you did. And if you die, who's going to listen to you complain? Anyway, the worst part of the activity was that Frankie, now on her third elephant trip, was tired and a little bit fussy. She wanted to get back on the elephant for the ride back. Then she didn't want to because she was scared. Then she did, then she didn't. So the elephant got up and left her. At which point, of course, she cried because she wanted to. So to make her happy, I told her I would give her a ponyback ride to the shore. Then my smart aleck wife snaps a picture. The two soaking white elephants with people riding on their back walking towards shore, and me behind them soaking wet with Frankie on my back. The symbolism is crushing. At dusk, we were treated to a pole boat trip. I don't know what you call it. They were like dugout canoes, but they were paddled. They weren't paddled, they were pushed along by big poles around the island. We didn't see many critters and only heard the peacocks, but there's always something peaceful about a boat trip in the jungle at dusk. That night, we were treated to a slideshow explaining what great efforts at conservation the Nepalese were doing and how smart and successful they were. After that, we had dinner featuring rump of rhino and tiger ball soup. I carried Frankie's limp body back to the room by 10. And that's the end of the story. Tomorrow, the trip home. Let me share with you a couple of things. As always, we start with the map. There's India again. You can see the white caps of the Himalayan mountains. You remember we were at Kathmandu and hiking in Pekora. And here down at sea level is Chitiwan National Park. Zoom in on that. It's not going to be very helpful for us. Okay, and then let me show you. I just have a few pictures to show you as well. Okay, here's how we rode out there. There's Alex in the front. There's Frankie holding on to the elephant guide. That's Joe and Matthew. And Bethany's right behind Frankie and I don't know, some random girl. Here's the awful picture of the three elephants carrying the people back to the shore. Here's one of my favorite pictures of Frankie, terrified and excited at the same time in the back of an elephant. And there's our rhino friend. Oh, and there's Joe with Alex and Frankie. We head up and we got to climb back onto the elephants. And that's it. That's all we have for today. Hope to see you again tomorrow. Bye now.